So Trent, baby boy, my
Hello.
best friend.
Okay.
What have you been eating recently?
It's nice to see you. I ate something interesting in preparation for this. I just had some grocery store sushi. I don't know if that's divisive or not. Do you have a stance?
Yummy.
Oh, you're pro?
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're
It's probably
anti?
bad. I don't really care. In all honesty, I don't really care. I don't think I've ever had grocery store sushi, but for all my Rutgers peeps, I have had sushi from what's the place in College Avenue? Um,
Oh, from Brower?
no, not Brower. The one where you can get with meal swipes.
Cafe West?
Cafe West. I've had sushi
Oh,
from
they
Cafe
do have
West,
sushi,
which
but
is
there
essentially grocery store sushi.
isn't the only option like California rolls?
I think there's one more, but I think it's like mostly California rolls.
Believe it or not, as tempted as I was vegetarian during that time, and I never caved with the Cafe West sushi wasn't particularly tempting, might I add. Oh, so do you remember like a few months ago when I mentioned my discovery of like the cookie dough in a jar kind of deal, or like
Yes.
so today, update, I found the funfetti version, and boy, I'm living the American dream. What did you have?
Well, Trent, thanks for asking. I had, so I had Indian food.
Sure.
I had a thing called paratha, which is, I don't know how to explain it. It's like bread
Sure.
in a way. It's like flat. Um,
A
yeah.
flatbread?
No, I would never call it that. Don't be ridiculous. But all my Indian peeps, all of them will know what I'm talking about.
I looked at our
Um,
analytics. We have a few listeners in India, so it's nice that you
yeah,
shouted them out like that.
yeah. I mean, look, man. I we the what's the saying? The customer is always right.
That's a saying. Does it
Yeah.
apply
So
here?
it like it adjacently. I think it's like give them what they want, give the customer what they want. Is that a thing?
So what were like the the sides?
Like plain yogurt and pickled carrot.
Like baby carrots or like full long
No,
carrots?
no. It was like chopped up, and then it's like all spicy and shit. It's like indie. Oh, wait, yeah. It's all spicy.
Parth, you're allowed to curse. It's
Well, I
alright.
don't know. Your parents are listening.
Yeah, Parth and I talked before this, and we were like, as you described, it's a monstrous interview. So obviously, our relatives are gonna hear this one, so that we had
Yeah.
to maintain a certain level of etiquette. We said to keep it
Well,
PG-13.
well, since you've mentioned that we're having a guest, why don't we just cut right to the intro so we can get right to it? How about that, Trent? Does that sound good?
Well, I think by this time we will have cut to
Cue the intro. Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the movie. This week we're talking about Promising Young Woman, and with us we have Merie Weismiller Wallace. Was this a good interview, Trent?
Yes, as you eloquently described it, it was a beastly interview.
Yeah, so this was a long interview, I've heard.
Is it particularly long?
I don't know, it only went on for about an hour and 20 minutes.
We talked, she talked. Classic.
Should we just get into it?
Let's let it speak for itself.
All right, guys, we hope you enjoy what's about to come. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our interview with Merie Weismiller Wallace. She worked on many films that we'd like to talk about. She's a still photographer, and she's worked on our film for today, Promising Young Woman. Thank you so much for being with us.
I'm very happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
So, just to start off, what got you introduced into like the film world?
I was in college and I was studying sciences, which I loved, but I realized that I had a creative side to my nature, which would not be fulfilled if I pursued the sciences. And I had to make a hard call. And then I had to think, well, if I'm pursuing the arts, what is it that I'm interested in? And I'm not exactly clear how it came to me, but I decided that I wanted to be involved in the film industry because it is a collaborative art where everybody has to be highly creative, and yet they have completely separate specialized fields, and nothing is the same with a different, if you have a different prop department, the movie's different. So it's just this strange swimming of fishes of creative people.
So, did you have a love of movies earlier in life, or did this sudden career interest take you by surprise also?
I loved movies. I loved them, but I was not like a movie nerd. I liked them as part of something that I would share with friends. Where we would go out together, we'd see one, we'd talk about it. But I also saw like the mirror image of my dream life and films. And I part of the way that I knew that I was a creative force was that my dream life was so peculiar and vivid and exceptional and reminded me so much of filmmaking that I just took an interest in films, actually more on how they were made than that I loved going to them, although I did also love going to them.
That's great. So, what was your first job working in the industry?
Okay, so the way that I did it was I ended up going to USC Film School for a Master of Fine Arts in film production because I wanted to go to film school and learn more about film making. So I had a friend who was offered a job as assistant to the director and producer on a feature, which he declined, but he said, if you can afford to take it, they're not paying much, but if you can afford to take it, you will learn so much. And I was super thankful for that opportunity because the learning was my priority, not the income at that point, although I got into a lot of debt thinking that way. But anyway, and so my first job was actually, again, as assistant to producer, assistant to the director on 3 films in a row: Masters of the Universe, a film called Cherry 2000, which if you haven't seen it is quirky and amazing. And I have a little Robert Redford story to tell about that. The film has nothing to do with Robert Redford, but I have a little story. But anyway, and the other one was called Farewell to the King, written by John Milius, starring Nick Nolte and Nigel Havers, and shot in Borneo, Malaysia. And it was there that I fell into my camera.
So, you mentioned your time at USC Masters Film Program, and that's obviously like the place to go for film. And I wanted to ask how your time was there and what that was like.
It blew my mind. I loved it. I cannot tell you how much I loved it. And part of the reason I loved it is because I was with my tribe. And before, when I'd been undergraduate, I was at a really amazing and wonderful school that I kind of didn't fit into. And I kind of had the square peg in a round hole syndrome. And instead of going, oh, you guys are wrong for me, I was asking myself, what's wrong with me? I'm not okay. Whereas I got to USC Film School, I'm like, oh, I get it. I'm like this, not like that. Also, I was really fortunate because so I went to, my master's program was 3 years long. And I went to the first 2 years of it at the old film school that George Lucas went to, which was old military barracks on the USC property. So it was these funky bungalows from, I guess, like, the 40s or whatever. And the graffiti on the ceiling in the editorial room was unimaginable. And it was just this really super experience. And then my third year, they bulldozed the old school and moved us into the Steven Spielberg campus, which was totally paid for by Steven Spielberg. And while we had like way more equipment, we had more of everything, it had a sterility of being new modern architecture. I'm hoping now it's like funkier or whatever, but at that point it was more like working in, a fancy hospital or airport than at the old place. So anyway, I had an amazing experience, and I loved the students. They were creatives. They were, and like the people that wanted to be editors were just this breed, and the people that were interested in sound, and the people who chose camera, and it was just a wonderful creative experience.
Another one of our guests, Evan Schiff, he was a USC editor graduate, and he edited Birds of Prey. So just
wow,
cool. So where was your undergrad, just out of curiosity, and
I went to a college called Mills College, which is an all-women's college in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it was amazing. And the reason I went to an all-women's college is I'd gone to actually a private co-ed high school. And when you're a teenager and there's a bunch of really fabulous guys around, it's a little bit hard to concentrate. Sure. And so I thought, like, okay, well, I just did that. I just had that train wreck, which was fun, but I don't really need that for college, because I'm going to do college like college. Mm-hmm. So I went to an all-women's college, and it was really amazing, except that it had a slight wealthy sorority vibe that was not mine, and I was in the sciences, and so I just kind of got a little bit off course. I did graduate in audio visual communications, which was the precursor to going to film school, but it was a brand new program, so it wasn't like it was a destination for people like me. It was kind of a catch-all at that point.
Right. So you brought it up a little bit, but there were people that went into camera, and just to segue it into your chosen profession, could you explain what exactly a unit still photographer actually does, and like what your role is on set?
I'd love to, because even a lot of people in the film industry and a lot of people in the studios don't actually know what we do. So I take still photographs for publicity, advertising, and archiving. And I stand next to the motion picture camera. On features, I'm in the union, and so on features, I'm mandatory staffing, so I'm there, from call to wrap every day on a feature. And I stand next to the motion picture camera, and I stop motion and capture everything that the motion picture camera is capturing. And so if you were to take a frame out of the movie and there was a stuntman flying, it would just be this big blur because it's motion picture. So I stand next to it and I catch the stuntman in midair. But also, it's the same thing. If you were to take a frame out of the film, it's harder to control blinking, whereas I stop motion in like a fraction of a second. That being said, I do work with the DP, I work with the camera operator, I work with the sound man, I work with the director. I see what the vision of the movie is, because it is when you see the stills that you go, oh, wow, that looks like a weird movie. That looks like an interesting movie. Oh, I love that actor. Like, whoa, what's that about? And it is the stills that announce the coming of the movie. And if there was no publicity and no marketing and no advertising, nobody would know to go see those incredible performances. That being said, it does not require stills to make a movie. And when people start getting agitated and they start looking for something they can control, they can go like, do you have to be there right now? Or like, don't you have enough? But they don't really know, because I don't report to anybody. I'm my own boss. I do turn work over to the studios. So I do have somebody over my shoulder seeing if I'm, good at my job or not. But on the set, I don't answer to anybody. And I think if they could see by the end of the show what my body of work is, the thousands of pictures that documented all of these people, when the director and the DP talk, when the director is reaching and he's helping an actor, the work is just this incredible archive. And it's great for right then when they release the movie, but also if they do a retrospective on, that director, that actor, that DP, and they go back and they choose, they go, oh, here's the DP Chivo on, this movie directed by Terrence Malick in Texas. And there's these super cool shots of Chivo doing this thing.
So we were wondering what your relationship with the director, the DP, and the actors are when you're on set.
So I'm a collaborator and I'm a presence, but I don't actually technically have a relationship with them, because I just do my own thing. So for example, if you can imagine like the boom operator, he or she is holding the camera, recording sound. And they may have to speak to the director, they may have to speak to the DP, they may have to speak to an actor, but their job is not to direct the actors, to talk to the, their job is to know exactly what to do and be completely silent and anonymous and just do their best work. And that's kind of true of everybody. Again, like the focus puller. He has to talk to the DP. Sometimes he has to talk to the director. Sometimes he speaks to the actors, please, I need you to hit your marks, or at least be, within the zone. But his job is not to talk to those people. His job is to just zen in and just follow focus.
You worked on Promising Young Woman, which is our chosen film of the day. And how'd you get involved with that? What was that like?
It was really fun. It was, I kind of got into it sideways. I was called to see if I was available. I'd been recommended. I happened to be available. I didn't know that much about the project. I did know that the director, Emerald, was just a fabulous person. The cast I was really interested in. And I didn't know that much about the story before I said yes. So in that situation, I was given, once I had said yes, I was given the script at the last minute and was sort of like, oh, wow, how's this going to be handled? How's this going to be done? But I loved working with that team. I loved working with the DP. Also, again, the lighting, choosing the mood, and then trying to echo the mood, with my exposures and my choice of angles. It was a challenging subject for me personally, because one could perceive it, let's just say, as a revenge drama. And revenge is not one of my favorite topics, regardless of gender. So I think, in some ways it's super cool to have a woman's revenge movie, but revenge, I'm not big on revenge. So I was really trying to say, how do I shoot this in a way to completely empower the film, the way the director wants it, the way the actors are giving it, the way it's lit, and just sort of, suspend my own perspective on the subject matter and completely support the filmmakers. And I'm really glad I could take that outlook, because then it just became a lot of fascinating fun, and I ended up respecting everybody more than I knew more about them and respected them even more at the end than the beginning.
So you mentioned you got Promising Young Woman like through a recommendation, and we were wondering, how does one go from job to job in your line of work, and if you're like freelance and you're working for the studio, right?
Right. So I am completely freelance. And the way I get work, I mean, first of all, by now I have a reputation, which is helpful, but essentially, sometimes the director asks for me. Sometimes the publicist has heard of me and or worked with me and recommends me. Sometimes the DP has worked with me. They say, "Oh, she's worked with that DP 4 times. When the going gets tough, she knows how to dance that dance." So it is always different. But when I'm looking for work, I tend to go to the studios and say, "Look, I'm between jobs. I'm looking for work. Do you have any greenlit projects that are coming up that you might consider me for?" And then they say yes, and they tell me like who's involved. I'm like, "Oh, I've worked with that person before." "Oh, really? You have? Oh, okay. Well, sure, we'll put your name in." So either I'm asked for by a director, or a studio puts me up with a group of maybe 5 recommendations, and the filmmakers pick somebody from the group.
So it seems to me that with like the nature of your job being that you have to be there from like start to finish, that especially at this point in your career, you have to really take into consideration like all your script offers, because you're going to be there for a number of months, right?
Yes and no. Yes and no. If I'm offered, let's just say 3 jobs, and they all pay the same and they're all at the same time, and then I read the scripts, but what ends up happening really is like one comes in first, you don't have the other ones, you're so thankful to have a job that you say yes, and then just when you've committed to the other, then another one comes in and you have to make a choice, and you're at home, like wringing your hands. That being said, the truth of the matter is, I, in my life, have had to work for money. I have to work to support myself. I have to work to help support my family. And actually, in our particular situation, I was farther in my career. I loved my career more than my husband. And so we made the decision that I would stay with my career and I would be the primary breadwinner. So a lot of times I took a job because I needed to pay the bills. But what ended up happening was, after a while, I found the people that I made sense to and who made sense to me, and they started calling me again. And that's the best. Like, so for example, I did 5 Clint Eastwood movies in a row. I've done 3 Terrence Malick movies, and was actually asked for more, but there was a family situation that I had said yes, and then I had to say no, and then I didn't ever get to work with him again. I'm like, oh, but my family was and is my priority. I had a younger kid, so and I got to work a lot with director Alexander Payne. I got to work with director Sam Raimi, Spider-Man fame. I mean, I have worked
Big
with
Sam Raimi fans here.
Yeah, okay. We were just about to get into that.
Okay, well, you can get there, because I love Sam. So I guess what I'm saying is, after a while, people met me, and then they would ask for me again, or if they saw my name in a group submitted by the studio, they would pick me. And then I got to work with people I liked and who liked me. And boy, is that different and better than either coming in cold or working with people who don't like you.
So, on a film set, what type of camera do you use, and like, does that change? And just if you could go into your equipment.
Okay, so I started in film, And I started from the very beginning Canon, and I adored it 100%. And I shot, I had 3 bodies, multiple lenses. I can talk about the lenses in a second. When everything went digital, I hated digital, was a complete snob, but I couldn't really explain why I hated it as much as I did. So I made a point of educating myself, and I was scared because literally, growing up, I didn't know how to make my toaster work. So I was not a techie. But I said, no, digital is so horrible. So I really said, I'm going to teach myself how to do this. And then I'm going to be able to say exactly why I hate it. And I loved it so much. So,
know your enemy.
Yeah.
So I just switched over from Canon film to Canon digital. And I was one of the very first unit still photographers to go digital. And there's kind of a cool story on that if you end up asking about it. But then recently, so I was all Canon, and I used the 1DX, which is like their big sports model, because people move in movies, and I really needed to be able to track action and stop motion. And I had a huge kit of prime lenses. I didn't use zooms at all then, but then the mirrorless silent cameras came out. And one of the things that you may or may not know about my career was that when we had cameras with mirrors that made noise, click, 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 we had to put them in these great big soundproof boxes that we called blimps. And they were this big box in front of your face and makes you look strange. And so the actors see this big box going like that at them. And when the mirrorless came out, I could get rid of the blimp, because the mirrorless cameras are silent, because the mirror isn't going up and down, going click, click, click. And they work through a video tap through the lens, so it's still perfect through the lens viewing, but it's in a video tap. And they have a couple other tricks to them. For example, you can see your exposure and your color temperature. So if you've got the wrong ISO, or you have the wrong, you're set for tungsten, not daylight, you can see it through the lens. And that, for my job, that and the fact that it's silent, boom, I went Sony. I've got 2 Sony A9s, which is the top of their line, although they just came out with an A1, which I have to check out. And for lenses now, I do have prime lenses, but I have found that I very often use my zooms. So it's 24 to 70, and then 70 to 200, and they're f2.8, which means that's a pretty fast lens, and the glass is gorgeous. And I can really adapt. So if the boom comes into my shot, I can just zoom in a little bit. I can really be flexible for the situation. And I find that I can get more really good shots when I can use my zooms than I could before, when I would pick, okay, I'm going to do everything on a 35, and then, oh my God, I wish I had a 200 right now.
I'm in a love affair with Canon right now. And I prefer zoom lenses also. I feel kind of stuck in place when I use prime lenses, although I like the focus options. But, Parth,
Well, yeah, no, I was just going to say one other thing is the Steve Yedlin, who's the cinematographer for Ryan Johnston's movies. There's a lot of cool stuff about color science and like film versus digital. But since you mentioned him, I have to ask, because I'm a Sam Raimi fanboy, I'm a Spider-Man fanboy, and I have to ask you about Spider-Man 3. What was that like? Do you have any Sam Raimi stories? Again, big fans.
We saw the photos on your website from Spider-Man 3, and they were awesome.
And it was shocking because these are photos that are burned in my mind, and now I'm talking with the person that's actually made them.
That's nice. Thank you. Okay, first of all, Sam is an amazing, amazing man to work with. He is funny, subtle, quiet, intelligent, knows what he wants when given choices, knows how to define and arrive at what he wants. He's a super collaborator. Really spends time with his actors, but knows his DP intimately, and they come in as a team prepared for how things will shift as the different characters get their own kind of look and stuff. I'm a huge Sam fan, huge Sam, and for me personally, both he left me alone to do my best work, which is great because some people, I don't know, they'll either try to control you or whatever. He didn't. He just like, you're here for a reason. You know what you're doing. Go ahead and do it. But then also when I would share some of the stuff, I go, oh my God, Sam, look at this shot, because I also did Oz the Great and Powerful. Like, look at the shot of the Yellow Brick Road. And he just loves visuals. And so he could really get excited by the photography. And that, again, just like he would watch me shoot and he would see what I was shooting, and I would notice him. He'd catch my eye and he'd smile because he knew that I saw something that he loved also.
I've listened to the commentary tracks for all 3 of the Spider-Man movies, and all it is the cast and crew fawning over how collaborative and great Sam Raimi is. So you're corroborating their story.
You also worked with, I'm assuming you've had to talk with and whatnot, Bill Pope, who's my favorite cinematographer, and if you have anything about him, because I think he's awesome.
Bill Pope, he is very awesome. The thing about him, again, is that he's a relatively quiet person, and a very, very intelligent man. And when you look at him, you can see he's quiet, and you can sort of tell that he's intelligent. But then when he starts to create the visuals, it's breathtaking. You know which camera moves he chooses and how much depth he's using, or going from depth to flat. Like, he really works the visual world, and I just feel like he works very closely with the production designers, and they pick their color palette in advance, and I don't know, he just is a very, very creative man, but again, not it's sort of like he just very quietly blows your mind.
So here's a out of left field question. You were uncredited on Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and we were wondering what the story was there.
That show belonged to Zaid Rosenthal, who is a unit still photographer, and that was his show. Okay. But he had been on it for maybe 5 or 5.5 months, and it showed no sign of wrapping, and he had been away from his family. And so at a certain point, when maybe they said, oh, this is going to go another 1.5 months, or this is going to go another 3 weeks, and it was past the date he'd already been promised that he could go back to his family, he, I guess, went home to his family. And so they brought somebody in to just replace him for the last 2 weeks, or whatever it was, which was me. But then that turned into the last 6 weeks. But it was Zaid's show. So I would have loved to have been credited because I would have felt great, but I did not. It was not my show.
Oh, what scenes were they doing in your 6 weeks?
So we did a lot of motorcycle work, which was fantastic because Arnold on a motorcycle is just really a sight to behold. We did the scene, I'm so sorry, I can't even really tell you what it was, but where the not the Terminator man, but the Terminator machine was in like this huge, like this like junkyard apocalyptic world.
Right.
So I did that work, and then a lot of work with the Terminator and the young boy, the sort of more, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a specific scene, and nothing's coming to mind, but a lot of sort of Big Brother scene.
Well, that kind of ties into another James Cameron picture, Titanic. Big James Cameron fans. Titanic must have been a monster of a film to shoot.
And was there a big model boat?
Okay, so Titanic was the hugest film I had and practically have ever worked on. And I think monster is a really good way to describe it, because it was huge. It was the movie, working on the movie was like climbing Mount Everest. It was all nights. It was 7 months. We were in Nova Scotia, we were in Mexico, we were in Los Angeles. There was a ship that was almost to scale. It was not quite exact, but it was almost to scale. And I apologize for not knowing the statistics. I always ask my husband, because he has the statistics in his head, so that I don't hold them in my head. But it was almost to scale. And another thing that was insane about it was because it was in a 3-acre tank of water that we could walk in up to our chests for most of it, but right where the ship was, it was over 60 feet deep. So the ship was up on these huge gimbals, and when it sank, it would hinge, and then it would move into this 60-foot abyss, essentially. And then when they would call cut, it would come back out again, right itself, and people would run around drying it off. And all the extras would have to get their coats dry again. And then we would do it again. But because it was essentially 3 acres of tank on land right next to the water, so that when you were up, you looked out at sea. But you could only do that in one direction. So they had everything flipped. They had all the signs flipped, all the buttons on the opposite sides of the clothing. So when we were supposed to be shooting from left to right, all the signage was flipped. All the buttons were flipped. We did everything from right to left to right, whatever. And then they flipped the film when they edited it. And so, they knew, oh, we're shooting left to right now. Oh, we're shooting right to left now. It was just this incredible, the logistics were amazing and difficult. And we were wet. I was in wetsuits, dry suits. When we were shooting the interiors, they were also on these stages that were submerged underwater. And you would start and it would be dry, like the dining room. And then again, it would tilt. And then it would start going into the water of the tank. It was a tank of water, and the water level would rise and rise and rise. And so I would start, I'd start and I'd be shooting, and then I'd be shooting like this, and I'd be up on my toes, and then I'd be up like this, and then I'd be blowing air into my dry suit so I could get a little bit more, until I'm up with my head knocking on the ceiling and I'm floating. And I've stepped back onto a structure that allowed for the crew to stay up. And we had safety divers that were, their jobs where they stayed underwater and they watched our feet to make sure that we always had footing. It was logistically just incredible. And again, almost all of it was shot at night, because a lot of the movie is night exterior.
So another movie I wanted to ask you about was Lady Bird.
That was a joy. That was just an amazing pleasure. The Saoirse Ronan is smart and wonderful and easygoing and collaborative and low key and personable, and she's such a chameleon and such an eclectic person. But she got her role of like a small town, inland California, 50s, or back in time person, that that you would think that that's who she was. And then to later see her interview, and you get a sense of who she really is, and you think, my gosh, what an actress, that she could be that other girl.
So did you get to interact with Greta Gerwig at all?
Yes, the thing is, again, for my job, it is better if I mind my own business and I stay kind of silent. But for sure, I mean, I had to work with her. I had to show her what I was doing sometimes. I had to stand right with her sometimes. I would, while we were between takes, I'd be part of a conversation with the DP and her, just talking about whatever. I would have loved to have, I would have loved to have gotten to know her better, but I would have not been doing my job to have done that. So I just have to take what I got. But yes, I interacted with her a lot. And truthfully, I had the pleasure of shooting her a lot because I was so in support of the way she was directing. And again, just a female director and stuff. So I got just a slew of super cool pictures of her working. And that was always just such a charge for me to have, So yeah, I did, and I enjoyed it.
So you mentioned that I think you said you worked on 5 Clint Eastwood films. And hot take, Clint Eastwood is a cool guy. Could you speak on any of those experiences and what those movies were like to shoot?
Yeah. So they were incredible. And the films that I did shoot were, I started on a smaller film called Bloodwork. We then did Mystic River in Boston, which is with Sean Penn and Tim Robbins, and a fantastic cast. And then I went on and did $1 Million Baby, which was a mind-blowing experience. And then I did Letters from Iwo Jima and Flags of Our Fathers. Those were the last 2 that I did. The thing about Clint is, again, he knows exactly what he wants, and he sort of specializes in not catching people off guard, but what he wants is, before anything becomes systematic, if you do 10 takes, people kind of start doing it the same way over and over again. And so sure, the director can say, well, can I get a little bit more fear? Can I get a little bit more? But what Clint loved was when people were kind of getting a feeling for how it was going to be going, and that there's an unknown quality. And he very often, particularly in the first 3 of those films, but he would do 1 take, and that was it. And you knew that you had to be your best, having never done it before. And that is not easy. I mean, the reason they do multiple takes is so that everybody gets up to speed and everybody can do their best work. To have to do your best work and take 1 when you don't know what's coming it's a challenge, and it's a technique, but it gets kind of a raw performance from his actors, and it gets sort of unknown movements from the camera people that shouldn't be duplicated. So anyway, the set, he does not allow any yelling or loud talking or loud banter and laughter. And for example, when it's time to roll, very quietly, the first assistant director twirls his finger and says, okay, we're rolling now. And the set has to be quiet enough so that you can hear a man very quietly say, we're rolling. And so if you are having a conversation, you're going to be talking while they're rolling, and the whole crew will look at you. So nobody does that. And so it's just this super still, quiet, soft-spoken few words. and you move like a clock, and it just keeps going. And he very often would finish his whole day before lunch, and he'd say, okay, thank you, everybody. That's lunch and wrap. And everybody's going, what? We've only worked 6 hours. We're used to working 15, but at any rate, he just had a certain style. And if we weren't done by lunch, we'd be done within 2 or 3 hours after lunch. So that's like maybe an 8-hour day. And most features at that time were a 12-hour minimum, and often 14 and 15. With, just so you guys know, with COVID, a lot of the regulations that they've put into place so that we can work and be safe is keeping it to a 10-hour day. It's a very different experience. And I have to say it's actually better, because 12, 13, 14-hour days plus driving, and what if you were working all night and you're driving after 14 hours and it's dawn and you're exhausted? The way that feature films have been made literally cause physical burnout and really make people unhealthy and start to not feel good in their heads because of sleep deprivation. And now with COVID, with the 10-hour days, you can make a movie. You just have to know what you're doing, and you can still feel good by the end of the show. And that's kind of new.
So I read online that you've been the president of the Society for Motion Picture Still Photographers for 2 years, and we were wondering, what do you do, and where do your members come from?
Okay, so I was the president for 4 consecutive years. What I did was this. I was for 2 years with a co-chair, a co-president. Her name was Nicola Good. And then we were also the head of the exhibition committee and the archiving committee. And then she stepped back, and we just co-chaired those together. But I was the president by myself for 2 years. So I was essentially president for 4 years in a row, 2 as co-chair, two solo. And last year I stepped down. I loved it more than anything. But 4 years, it's a service job.
It's a presidential term.
Yes. Good. Hey, I never thought of that. Nice. I like that. But anyway, so as president of the Society of Motion Picture Still Photographers, what I sought to do was to bring up our visibility, because a lot of people don't know what we do. And also the people in the Society of Motion Picture Still Photographers, which we call the SMPSP, we have to have worked a minimum of 8 years in our craft. We have a really hard process of choosing new members, and because we both require that the people be artistic and creative in their job, as well as perfect technicians. But so I worked a lot in trying to get our work exhibited, because what happens is we'll shoot like this, body of work, and they will use 12 pictures that we would not have chosen to advertise the movie. And you see like your picture come out in a newspaper, and you go, oh my God, why did they use that one? That's not my best work. So after a while, we started taking what we consider our best work as artists and exhibiting it. So we've gotten to exhibit at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. We've exhibited at Atlanta's photo festival, at New York, Photo New York, Photo LA. We also went to all the archivists and said, hold the bodies of work together. Keep them together. They are of incredible value. And the archivists go, we know, can you please tell the rest of the studio? They won't give us enough. They keep making us, downsize. We have no place for it. So we just tried to rally everybody to protect our bodies of work, both when it was analog and now that it's digital.
So this is going to be a bit of a reach for a segue, but you just mentioned downsizing. And you worked on a film called Downsizing, directed by Alexander Payne. Thank you, Trent. That's one of my friends, Chloe, is a huge Matt Damon fan, and if you have any Matt Damon stories.
Well, I want to say that I only worked on the USA version. Most of it was actually filmed up in Vancouver, and there was another still photographer. So I worked in Los Angeles, and Alexander Payne likes to work in his home state of Nebraska, so we got to do a little bit of work there. Matt Damon he's fabulous because he's one of these people who completely embodies the part, and you start to think that's him. And then he comes out with himself, and he is quirky and intelligent, very funny, just really a bright, funny, witty guy, plays with words. And so you get caught off guard because you think you know him as the character, and that he is the character because he stays so focused with the character, and then he'll turn around and just surprise you. Lovely, lovely man.
So you also worked on Midsommar, and I believe that was filmed in Hungary, although I believe it was based in Sweden, right?
Okay, so it was supposed to take place in New York and in Sweden, and it was filmed in Budapest, Hungary. And they brought in the American cast, and then they had an entire Swedish cast, many of whom hardly spoke English, but are incredibly famous in Sweden. So it's like the glitterati of Swedish actors of Swedish films. And so we had the assistant director, who ran the set, and then the Swedish assistant director who, translated and echoed. And so it was sort of like everything was being done twice for the two casts.
And I know they really made the whole village, right? And you got to experience that?
I did. They built that, basically there was some farm with huge fields, and they built the whole village there, and all the interiors and exteriors were usable. So you could do a take where you'd come out of one place and walk into the next, and it was all live, and it was all practical. You know what I mean? It's not like they walk up to the door and they knock and the door opens and you can't really see in. And then 3 weeks later, there's a different place where a door that looks the same, they knock and they let you in your interior. No, we were in the village.
Yeah, I think Ari Aster is really interesting. Did you have a chance to see Hereditary before you signed up for Midsommar?
I did, because I really love to research my the people that I'm going to be working with. The thing is that that's not my genre. I get the creeps way too hard. And so when I saw Hereditary, I was like, I hope that I can actually do this. And then I read the script and I was like, I hope that I can do this. But as it turned out, so I'm sorry, I should have clarified this at the beginning. I ended up actually only doing 2 weeks of it. I was offered the entire show. I accepted the entire show, but then I was offered another project by a director that I always work with. And so I ended up having to go on to the other project. And so I told them, I'm so sorry. I know I accepted. I want to make good. I want to make sure you get people, somebody. So I'm free until this certain date, at which point I have to leave. But if you want, if there's anything I can do. And they said, well, would you be willing to go to Budapest for 2 weeks? I'm like, let me think. Yes, I would actually. And what it turned out was that the 2 weeks that I shot was all the stuff leading up to the point where it got so scary that I don't know if I could ever do it. So
it worked out.
It worked out perfect for me. And I got to do a photo shoot with the actors. So they gave me the barn, and I set up an enormous photo studio where I could have people like walking like distance, like, you know, if they're little and they walk all the way to me with all these lights. And I was working with Hungarian grip and electric, not a ton of English, super wonderful, helpful people. And I just created this gray screen world, and they would just feed me the actors, and I would just play and do all these incredible stills, which we thought would be the poster. But the poster is not mine. The poster is from unit work from a Hungarian still photographer, and it's just a brilliant, scary shot that could only have happened in the moment. And that's what I really love about my job, is because what we do is we capture moments, and we have to be able to see them. We have to be able to watch. We have to wait till the glint of the tear in the eye is just so. We have to be just completely empathetic and intuitive and just lost in our frame. And, you know, we also forget that there's, you know, booms and green screens and light stands, and we're just up in the grill of these actors back on a, you know, 70 millimeter lens, not in their grill.
Right. So doing kind of a tonal shift from horror all the way back around to comedy. You worked on one of my favorite comedies of all time, Tropic Thunder, and I'm obviously Ben Stiller's amazing in that, but it features one of the best performances from my favorite actor, Tom Cruise. And anything you could say on that would be extremely awesome if you could.
Okay. The way I saw that movie was live theater comedy in the jungles one summer. We laughed. And we laughed, and you know, Jack Black is hysterical. Robert Downey Jr. is a genius, and I mean that amazingly. Ben Stiller is so focused, and he was so clear on, like, he was a director playing an actor playing an actor, and all the nuances, you know, and so. Like, and the actor that he was playing was too sissified to be in the jungles where we were, but Ben Stiller was not too sissified to be in the jungles. And working, like, okay, so I've done two movies in that we shot in Kauai. One was Tropic Thunder, where we were actually in the rainforest, and it's really hard to shoot there. And the other was The Descendants, Alexander Payne directing, where we were on the beaches. That's nicer. But again, we just, you know, we just were in the jungles with these. And Nick Nolte was also in Tropic Thunder. I mean, the cast was just brilliant. And I again, as I said, it was live comedy in the jungle one summer for me. On that situation, I was fortunate enough to get to shoot the movie poster. So when you see the poster,
Whoa.
that's mine.
Oh my gosh.
So what I got to do was, like in that situation, sort of like I'm the director, right? But I had watched everything the director had done, Ben Stiller. I had watched the way the DP lit it, John Toll. And so I was basically trying to recreate that, but for stills. They gave me helicopters.
Oh
I
my
had
God.
helicopters landing in the back of my stills. I had the guys jumping into helicopters, and then the helicopter taking off slightly so that it was clear that the helicopter was not on the ground, and then the guys jumping out. And they gave me really specific storyboards of what they wanted, and we planned out the day. You know, the helicopter's going to do this, it's going to do that. We had safety meetings, but it just was like a photographer's dream, and all of the lead cast. You know, I mean, Ben Stiller jumping out of helicopters. Oh, can I tell one other tropic story?
Oh, please do.
Keep talking.
We're on your time.
Okay, so a lot of helicopters in the movie, and that means a lot of helicopter pilots. right? But the movie was supposed to take place. It was a movie about a movie that took place in Vietnam, and so those are all Hueys and older helicopters from that period. But the camera helicopters are brand new, state of the art, with gimbals so that the camera doesn't, no camera shake, right? And the still photographer does not go up. When they're shooting, you don't do stills from helicopters. But I had made friends with the pilots, just because they're fabulous humans. The kind of people that want to be pilots are great people. And so they were doing this incredible sequence where Ben Stiller's character was on the top of a remote mountain, jungle mountain, and the picture helicopter was circling him, around, and you could see that there was no civilization, for miles and miles and miles. It was super remote location. And so one of the helicopter pilots asked me, well, do you want to get that shot? And I'm like, and like inside me, a little voice is going, oh, no, that's not my job. But I'm also going, of course I want that, of course I want that, but I can't have that. And he's like, well, I can't get you on the picture kind, because they can't have that many people, but I'll take you up in one of the Hueys. And there's a little voice in me going, I don't want to go in a Huey. And there's
an
another
old military plane.
Right. And there's a bigger part of me going like, oh my God, yes. So they strapped me in, opened the cargo door. I had full safety gear, and we rose up, and I am going, oh my God, I have a husband. I have a daughter. What am I doing? And we go and we dance with this helicopter, this, camera helicopter. So we can never be in its shot because it's Ben Stiller by himself in the middle of nowhere, right? So we're like chasing it, we're avoiding it, we're making dips. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is just horrible and fabulous at the same time. I'm kind of like, okay, well, if I'm going to die today, I'm going to rock this. And so I just had a, 200, I was in my Canons, so the 1DX with a 200 millimeter lens. And so he would get as close as he could. So like when the camera would be pulling back to like turn around, he would like zoom in. Ben knew I was there. He would act for me. And so I got these shots, and I'm like, these old helicopters, they vibrate. And I'm like, I bet there is not one shot that is in focus that doesn't have such bad camera shake and me shake. I'm hanging out of a helicopter in the jungle. The pictures were fine, and I loved it.
That's awesome. Side question. So when you're submitting all your photos to the studio, do you just give them like your whole SD card, or do you hand pick what they're given?
I essentially give them my whole card. What the process is at the end of the day, I download my cards onto a hard drive. I always ask permission in advance, but I tell everybody that this is how I like to do my work. I go through and I only remove pictures of my shoes, pictures of when somebody walks right in front of my lens, a picture where there's a super unattractive false expression that nobody needs to see that. So I'll go through and do just a really basic edit. And then I turn that drive into a lab, and then the labs put the images up online, and then everybody at the studio and any of the filmmakers get to look at my work online. And the copyright belongs to the studio. So I do not own my work at all. I'm just like the sound man. The sound man records sound and gives it to the studio. I take pictures and give them to the studio.
They're leasing your talents.
That's right.
Right. Trent, is there another one you want to talk about?
Yeah, last movie. Call of the Wild. We were wondering how it changes your job when it's very like blue screen dependent, and also when Harrison Ford has to interact with the CGI dog.
Okay, I will just say, because you said Harrison Ford, I did not care what Harrison Ford was doing. He is such an amazing man that I did not see blue screen ever. I did not see a CGI dog, wasn't there ever. I was in the moment with his performance, and he was in the moment of his performance. So that being said, if it had been a bad actor, I would have been crying hysterically that I was trapped on a movie with blue screen and a bad actor. But he was just so great, and the whole cast was the bomb. So what, for me, the way that I handled it was, there's a lot of people that do what I do that hate blue screen and green screen. But in my mind, I just imagine whatever it is that I'm supposed to be imagining. So I imagine the Yukon, at the turn of the century in the background, and I really don't see blue. And I compose for some mountaintops, and I just adapt, because they can then, it's like shooting on a seamless. They can then back my pictures with anything they want to of the Yukon, and so I think of it as very useful. I will actually add that they don't do that as much as I wish they would. I wish they would use more of my pictures and put in more backgrounds, but at any rate, they tend to use more of the practical location shots of mine than the ones that could have the Yukon going into depth.
Really, really last movie, because I just realized I wanted to ask about it. So you've worked with Terrence Malick a few times, Tree of Life, Brad Pitt. It sounds epic and awesome. Was it that?
It was. It really was. And Sean Penn. And Jessica Chastain, amazing work. Brad Pitt is remarkable. But the thing is that he's super professional and really private. So he will hang out and chat, because by the end of the shoot, you've hung out and chatted with everybody on the show. But he was just super focused, super in character, and would very often step away to be by himself. And he's got the kind of vibe, the presence, that when Brad Pitt steps away to be by himself, you don't go say, "Oh, so hi, Brad, what are you going to do this weekend?" You don't. You can see that he's actually still working, and that he's working alone, and you leave him to do that. But the thing that's odd about my job is this. What I love about the people that I work with is that they are at the top of their game. They are incredibly good at their jobs. So, like, I'm not starstruck that I work with Clint Eastwood and Sam Raimi and Alexandra Payne and Terrence Malick. But to watch these people, and Greta, to be honest, to watch these people do their jobs, to watch people that are good at their jobs rocking it, is just remarkable. So I can be as excited when I find out who the DP is as I am when I find out who the cast is. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to work, because I'd worked with Sean Penn before. I'm like, oh, great. And I'd actually worked with Brad Pitt before, although briefly also. So I'm like, oh, that's great. I can't wait to really? Chivo is lighting this? Oh my God, I can't wait to get there. So I get as excited about the crew as I do about the cast.
Yeah, just to be able to experience like auteurs like in their element, it's like you're in the presence of a higher power.
Well said. And the thing that's so incredible about my job is that I have to be right in the middle, right up front, right up front. When I went to USC Film School, what I really had hoped to do was to screenwrite and perhaps later get to direct something that I had written. But when I took the job as the assistant to the director and the assistant to the producer, and then I was out in Borneo on second unit, and I started shooting some stills there, which is when I fell in love with stills. I realized that I really wanted to be on set with the filmmakers. I did not want, I mean, I love writing. My father's a published poet. My mother was an incredible journalist and writer. And so I've got writing in my blood, and I really did want to write, but I wanted to be on set. So when I started shooting, I was like, this is where I need to be.
Trent, do you want to ask our final big one?
Yeah, so our final question for all of our interviewees is, what's the last great thing that you've watched?
Let me think. The last great thing that I watched. It's hard because we're streaming now, and the one thing I will say, I love going to movies in theaters. I love that. And I also love watching movies with people, and I'm sheltering in place alone.
So you can't do either of those things.
Right. So I can't do either of those things exactly. So the great thing that I watched was a Buñuel film called That Obscure Object of My Desire, which I had seen years before. And I thought, man, I just thought that was so incredible. And so I watched it again. And Buñuel, if you guys can watch any Buñuel, he was friends with Salvador Dali. And it's craziness, really brilliant. And then I also watched, again recently, was Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh,
Sergio Leone.
I love Once Upon a Time in America, but I love Once Upon a Time in the West. So that was the one I rewatched.
I thought you were going to say Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Well, okay, so that's the last...
Tarantino?
Yeah, that's the last film. I'm just trying to think, did I see that in the theater? Do you guys know?
Yeah, I mean, that was pre-corona.
Yeah, that
was released in
2019.
Yeah, then that's probably the last favorite film I saw in the theater. But so I've been rewatching old favorites, as opposed to streaming new stuff.
We're the same way. Like, during these hard times, like the comfort food movies are like what get you through the hard times.
That's right. And I'm going to tell you one really stupid, nerdy thing.
Please.
Because I can.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite movies of all time, don't ask me why, is Princess Bride.
Excellent film.
Yeah,
okay.
Rob
like
Reiner.
Movie.
So I love this movie, all right? So I got to do some little project. I do not remember the name of it or what it was for, but it was for television. And Mandy Patinkin, who played the Spaniard, was in this in this little thing, and I was just doing like 2 days on it, and in the 2 days he was dying, so I hardly even got on set to shoot him because it was such a sensitive scene. If it's super sensitive or sex or something, there's certain scenes where stills won't go in. So he was leaving, Mandy Patinkin was leaving, and everybody was saying goodbye to him, and I had hardly even said hello, and he'd done the whole film, and I was only there for 2 days, and he was leaving, and I just looked at him, and he walked past me, and I said, yeah, like whatever, and he walked out, and he's walking by himself, and I'm looking at his back, and I said, okay, here I go, and I went in behind him, and I said, I'm so sorry, excuse me, I hate to disturb you, but would you please just tell me that your name is Inigo Montoya? So he said, yes, but I'm going to tell you this. the way that I tell little kids, because little kids, they don't know who I am. They look at me, I've got gray hair, I don't look like the Spaniard. So he took me in his arms and he put his cheekbone to my cheekbone and he held me and he said, "My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die."
I'm sure that rattled you to your very core.
To my very core. And I just stood there, and then he stood back to look at the appreciation on my face. And I was like, oh my God. And then he just sort of like, tipped his head and walked away. And right behind me was this young, like 18-year-old boy, kind of like long in his body, a little gawky, hadn't quite filled out his physical manhood. And he just looked at me and he goes, "Oh my God, you just made my life."
I appreciate your ability to like shoot your shot with the celebrities when you're like, I'm only gonna have this chance once.
Yeah, yeah. It took all the bravery I had.
Yeah. No. Oh, your Robert Redford story. We never got to it.
Okay, so basically, what it was I was asked to do 2 weeks on A River Runs Through It. Because again, the still photographer who it was his show, he had to leave. So they brought me in for 2 weeks and I knew the prop master and she was one of my best friends. So the night before the whole show started, for me, excuse me, the night before I went to work, she and I were out at a restaurant and it's a small town out in, Montana. And at the table next to us was Robert Redford having dinner with his people. And so my friend, the prop master, introduced me. She says, "Oh, this is, Merie Wallace. She'll be doing stills, tomorrow." He goes, "Oh, great. Nice to meet you. You guys are having dinner together. How do you two know each other?" And we both just we sort of cringe and we were sort of embarrassed. And we said, "Oh, we did these 2 B movies together." And he goes, "Really? What were they?" And we go, "Oh, well, Masters of the Universe and Cherry 2000. He goes, "Cherry 2000? I love Cherry 2000. Okay, you've got to tell me, the scene where the boat is in the middle of the desert." And he just started picking our brains. And this film that previously I had thought was sort of like something that one doesn't discuss, when I found out that it was one of Robert Redford's favorite movies, I went back and had to rewatch it. Cult, fabulous film directed by Steve DeJarnett. And on that, I was assistant to the director, assistant to Steve Jarnett. I did not do stills on it.
Well, that's a fantastic assortment of stories. You've had an amazing career thus far. Trent, any?
No, that's all for now. Thank you so much for coming on. You've been a wonderful guest.
Thank you very much. Whenever you stop recording, I just want to pay you guys a compliment, or shall I do it while we're recording?
Sure.
Yeah. I want my mom to hear it, so sure.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So what I want to say to you is I think your questions were super intelligent and interesting. You gave me the opportunity to actually show my career with some breadth, and I got to tell some of the fun of it, and I got to tell some of the technical part of it. I also want to completely support you in reaching out to strangers like myself, and following something that you guys clearly, I can practically imagine you guys sitting together and coming up with your idea that you want to start doing this. I want to support your continuing to do it. And I want to support you in your love of film and to encourage you to help keep movies in theaters, because now that everything is streaming, there's a lot of film directors that are worried, I'm trying to make a feature. I want this to be in the theater. What if we don't go back to theaters? What if everything is streaming? So I just want to say, in your communities, support your local theater and just help us get past this pandemic and back to the future.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
very nice compliment. And your generosity in coming on and answering our questions is what makes it all possible.
Thanks so much. We
Win-win.
hope-
Thank you, guys.
So that was our guest for today, Merie Weismiller Wallace. She worked on Promising Young Woman, among a plethora of other awesome movies that you've probably heard of. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Parth,
Yeah?
that interview, wasn't it great? I liked
Okay,
it.
Trent, I have to ask you. I thought it was epic. What did you think?
Yeah. Epic is a good way to put it. What?
Okay.
Like, when she was talking, I was like, this is great. And then when we responded...
You know what I was like? I was like, this is epic. And then when we responded, it was like, holy,
I was like, this
oh
is
my
pretty
God.
good, too. Like,
This is epic.
not
right?
as good,
No,
but not bad either, you know?
We are never as good as our guests, which are the best of any show.
At the end, when she, like, showered us with compliments, I was like, thanks for saying that.
I know.
I was like, that was really nice.
Well, I guess since this is such a long thing, we should just tell our guests what's coming up next.
So next episode, we're going to discuss Promising Young Woman, since that's like our known release structure, and we may have a guest on to talk about it with us. Am I wrong?
Special guest.
A special guest to be announced.
Yeah, guys, we're going to leave you in suspense. We're going to make you wonder who it's going to be.
Parth and I didn't want to discuss Promising Young Woman as just two guys, so we're bringing in a third party to spice it up.
We did something similar with Gone Girl.
Yes.
We brought my very good friend,
Yeah,
Sophia Alexis.
we're diluting the masculinity, and you can wonder, since we're not yet saying the gender of this third person, it could be a man, and then it would be three men talking about Promising Young Woman, which is even worse.
Trent, I think that's a perfect place to leave this off. Find out next week if Craft Services deserves to be canceled for its mistreatment of women.
We'll find out.